Okay, so Phylum Mollusca. There are several different classes in Phylum Mollusca, but we're only going to talk about 3 of them today. Okay, I'm going to get you guys kind of a taste of mollusca, which is kind of a pun because a lot of your seafood lives in this phylum. Okay, so that's what we're going to be covering today. We'll start out with some just general basic stuff. Okay, it's Latin mollusca. Latin from molluscus, which means soft. And as we talk about these animals, that will make sense, hopefully, after the first one, but even with the first one, it still should make sense. These guys first appeared, guess when? Oh, about 500 million years ago. So far, everything we talked about has occurred about the same time. These guys, parts of some of these fossilize very well, and we can kind of date them better, but then a whole lot of parts of them don't fossilize at all, and they're very difficult to figure out just when did these things occur on the planet. You can find most of these just about anywhere. They can be marine, they can be freshwater, and some of them are terrestrial. Now, what do I mean by terrestrial? I don't know if we've really talked about that. So we haven't had much that has lived on where? Lives on land, exactly. Terrestrial, living on the land. So some of these you'll come across them. In a couple days, well, next week when we go down the hill and go looking for arthropods, we're more than likely to find some mollusks too. We did last year, all right? And they were pretty good sized, all right? And we'll talk about those. Keep you guys in suspense. It's kind of fun. These guys all have a mantle, M-A-N-T-L-E, which is what is their dorsal body wall. And remember, where does the dorsal part of an animal occur? Think about the dorsal fin on a shark. Where do we find that? On its back. The dorsal surface is the back surface. It is very muscular. Some of these are very strong animals. It also helps it creates the shell, if they have a shell, which of course provides protection. And it can also be used for locomotion. Some of these use their mantle to help them move. The other thing that's really, that you need to know they have is the radula. The radula is a rasping tongue, okay? Only found in mollusks. Okay, the only animals on the planet that have this particular part, and in some of them it's more like a ribbon that's covered in little like shark teeth almost. Okay, you guys all know what a rasp is, right? A big file that's a real rough file that you can like take a lot of material off when you pull it. That's the way these guys' tongues are set up. It's like a cat's tongue, but times 1,000. Okay, so you're saying, well, now you just said these are the only animals that have that. Now you just mentioned cats. It's a different structure. Okay, these guys are the only ones that have a radula. Yeah, do you have a question? Oh, if you need to, kind of. I can't really move that. All right, so these are the only guys that have a radula. So guess what a good question on your midterm's probably going to be? Either what's a radula or where do we find radulas or something along those lines, all right? The stuff that makes these phyla unique is definitely something that I'd like you guys to know, and that's what I'll be asking questions on. All right, these guys are sexual reproducers. All right. And they have what's called hemolymph instead of blood, essentially. It functions about the same. We have hemoglobin in our blood. They have hemolymph, which is interesting because this is colorless. You won't find a bleeding octopus and have it, you know, it's not going to be red blood. They don't have that. They don't have the iron in the blood to allow it to do that like we do. Or they can also have what's called hemocyanin. Cyan is a blue color, and this stuff turns blue. It's colorless until it hits oxygen. Turns blue in oxygen, O2, not Oz, okay? It might turn blue in Oz too, I don't know. But in oxygen, it definitely turns blue. So they do have blue blood. Again, these guys don't have a backbone. They're not chordates yet. We haven't even gotten to anything that has a real true backbone. We have things that have, you know, nerves that run through them, but not chordata yet, okay? So this is what most of them all have in common. Once you guys get this down, I'm going to erase it, and then I will start with class Bivalvia. I'll probably list the 3 classes that I'm going to have you guys know. There are more than that, but for a high school zoology class, these 3 are going to be plenty. Okay, we're just kind of getting you guys a little bit of this, a little bit of that, stuff that, yeah, you should know. It's good to know. Are we good on this? Can I get rid of it? Or at least the first, can I get rid of the first half? We're good? Okay. Okay. So we have 3 classes. We have Bivalvia. We have Gastropodia. And we also have Cephalopoda. And we'll break those down. I just wanted to list them out for you first, and then we'll start with Bivalvia, and we'll go from there. Bi is what? 2. And this is Latin, if I remember right. Let me make sure it is. Okay, so it's Latin. And it means 2 halves of a door, or 2, I'm just going to put 2 doors. Okay, Valvia in Latin actually means, like, you know, the doors, you probably have them in your closet where you pull the thing and the door folds. Okay, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's not just you don't slide it, you don't just open it, you pull it, and it does, as you pull it towards you, it kind of does that, and it kind of moves out of the way. That's what they're talking about here. Your bivalves have a hinged shell. Okay, they are aquatic. You find them in the water. It could be marine, it could be fresh. These are your clams, oysters, scallops, mussels. Okay, all very tasty animals. These are the first animals we've talked about that humans really consume willingly. Okay, we might eat tapeworms, but it's not because we wanted to, usually, right? We might ingest nematoda, but that's not because we wanted to. They came along with the food. These guys are actually significant to humans because we eat them, okay? And everybody in this phylum is consumed by humans, okay? So I'm going to be very hungry by the end of this. All right, so now I was talking about radula, only found in mollusks. These guys don't have a radula. Okay, well, doggone it. Remember, it's usually there's a rule and then there's an exception. These guys are the odd man out. They don't have a radula, the bivalves. Okay, there's not that much to them. No radula, and they don't have a brain either, really. They have a ganglial mass, but it's no real brain. They're not very smart. They do have gills. That's how they breathe. And they're filter feeders. They don't really go hunting for things. They kind of let it, you know, flow through their mouth, essentially. Okay. So what do they have? They don't have brain. They don't have gills. They do have, and we've been talking about this. These guys do have muscles. It helps to close and open the shell. They have nerves. Again, no brain, but that's okay. They're not quite that far, but they do definitely have nerves. They have a 3-chambered heart. How many chambers does your heart have? I got a 2, I got a 4, it's 4, okay? What you'll notice is the simpler animals, they have hearts, but they're a simpler heart. Ours is a 4-chambered heart, is much more effective for what we do. But if I was living underwater all the time, didn't really have to do much, 3-chambered heart is plenty for most of those. They have what's called an open circulation. So essentially, you've got there's the shell. The animal is just a big kind of mussel that lives in there, okay? It's just kind of, you guys have all eaten clams or seen scallops, right? Hopefully, maybe. If not, go get some, they're good, okay? It's essentially just a chewy, like, little morsel of meat. That's about it. There's not much in them, okay? Unless you're lucky and you come across like a pearl. These are the animals that make pearls. So we eat them, which is cool. We also get pearls from them, which is really cool too, okay? Because you can make money on pearls. What that is just, there's a little piece of sand that gets in, and because they secrete shell to keep them protected, it irritates. It hurts. So they start putting shell around it. And eventually it builds up, and now you've got a pearl that's a decent size. A lot of times they're not very big and whatnot, but we can culture. They actually have people that go down and put sand inside these animal shells. It irritates them. They wait a while, they come back and pop them open, and oh, hey, there's a bunch of pearls, okay? Cultured pearls are that way. So let's see here. So with an open circulation, all right, it has a heart. That is not really what the heart looks like, okay, but we're going to do that because that makes it easy. They don't have blood vessels. They just kind of pump hemolymph. They just kind of pump it out, and that's, well, they only have one. They just kind of pump it out into the environment, and it just kind of goes around, okay? It's like having a swimming pool, and you got one pump. If I throw a pump in a swimming pool, am I going to circulate that water? Sure, it'll move. Eventually, you know, the water's going to get sucked into the pump, and it'll blow it out the other end, and I'll get some movement in there. It'll cycle. It'll circulate. Is it terribly efficient? Well, for an animal like this, it's okay because it's not very big. It doesn't need to get blood to extremities, right, like we do, okay? We have what's called a closed circulation, meaning we have veins and arteries and capillaries and stuff, okay? We don't just have blood flowing around inside our bodies, right? You say, well, but if you cut somebody in the stomach, they're going to bleed. Well, yeah, because you cut a bunch of vessels. It's not just because we've got blood just pooling inside us. That actually is a bad deal if that happens. Okay, so these guys have simple eyes. Some of them, very simple. I mean, are they really eyes? They essentially allow them to see shadow, to see light and dark, and that's it. Okay. So they know if something's coming across. If they've got their shell open and they see a shadow come across the top of that shell, I better close up. Something's going to try to eat me. I'm going to close my shell tight. Okay. Simple eyes. They do have an anus, so that's good. They have very simple kidneys. We hadn't really talked about kidneys yet because we didn't really have anything that had them. They're very simple. They're not as anywhere near as effective as yours are, but they don't need to be. If I live in the water, I can just kind of release my watery wastes into the water and they get washed away, right? We can't really do that, okay? Because we live on land, so it's a little different deal. They can be dioecious, meaning male or female, right? Or they can be hermaphrodites. Again, for the midterm that's coming up, middle of October, so it's coming up. Make sure you know what hermaphrodites are. We've talked about them before. We're going to talk about them some more, but make sure you know what that is. Now, we talked about this shell. It's hard. It's made of CaCO3, which is calcium carbonate. Know that, okay? Because these are not the only animals that have calcium carbonate. We have some other ones in the next phylum we're going to talk about next week that also have calcium carbonate shells. Calcium carbonate is very easy for an animal in the ocean to assimilate, okay? A lot of your corals, we talked about corals. They, you know, a while back, they're cnidarians, right? But they do secrete calcium carbonate, sometimes like skeletons almost. They live in these, you know, all the hard stuff that you see of a coral. If your grandma has some coral in the bathroom that's decorative, that's calcium carbonate is what you're actually seeing, okay? More than likely. So CaCO3, calcium, carbon, 3 oxygens, calcium carbonate. Okay. These guys can be sessile or motile. The ones that are motile, they swim by, you know, if you got your shell and here's the hinge and here's your shell parts, they swim by jetting water out as they go. They've got an in-current siphon and an ex-current siphon, and they can actually help to kind of shoot water through one of those. The clappy motion helps a little bit, but some of them get huge and they never move. How huge? 4 feet wide and about 500 pounds for the giant clams. Okay, they're beautiful animals. They're really neat looking animals, very colorful. And those you can actually see the eye spots on them, but they're huge. They used to say, oh, you know, if you're a diver and you put your hand in there, it'll clamp shut on you and will drown you. They don't move that fast, right? If you put your hand in there and you wait for it to clamp down on you, that was your problem, right? That's not, these animals are not super fast. Why? They're huge. They don't go anywhere. They're about the size of your table. Okay? Your tables are about 5 feet, so just shy of that, right? And about that tall. Huge, huge thing. Okay. Any questions on bivalves? All right. Do we have all this? Can I get rid of it? Okay. So let's move on from class Bivalvia, and let's talk about class Gastropodia. Now, some of that word should look relatively familiar to you, but maybe not. I mean, I think we've talked about a little bit, pod or ped, and what it means, but we'll review. Okay. This is Greek, and it means stomach, foot. Right there's where we split it. Gastro, stomach. If you have gastrointestinal distress, you got a tummy ache, okay? Because your gastro is your stomach part. Intestinal, of course, your intestines. Poda is foot, or sometimes leg, okay? But in this case, stomach, foot, good enough. All right, these are your snails and slugs. And again, people do eat these. Okay, escargot. It's French. It just means snails. Okay, they serve them in the shell, some garlic butter, and you just take a little fork and you just pry the snotty part out. That's what they're they're like really loose gummy bears, okay? I've never eaten them, I've seen them. I am not that hungry, okay? These guys can be aquatic or terrestrial. The ones that we're gonna find down the hill are definitely terrestrial, okay? You might find them in the creek, but they can also come out on the land, and they're not gonna dry out immediately. The aquatic ones have gills. The terrestrial ones actually have lungs. Now, we've not talked about lungs yet in this class. These are the first animals we're going to talk about that have like that, okay? Well, the worms, you could kind of argue with some of the worms, but a lot of them just kind of breathe through the skin. So, lungs, kind of a big deal. Lungs allows things to be out on land, okay? These also have open circulation. Three-chambered hearts. These guys have a radula. They have a brain. Of course, they have muscle, they have nerves. They have an anus that is usually over their head. Say what now? All right, so draw the best snail I can here. I don't necessarily mean to make it look very Gary-like, okay? That's all I'm trying to do. All right, so does that look enough like a snail? We know that's what that is, right? Okay. They undergo what's called torsion, which means when they're very young and developing, they've got their mouth here and their anus here, like a lot of animals do. Then they undergo torsion, which just means essentially the whole body folds itself in half. So now we've got an animal that's actually built kind of like this. There's its mouth, there's its anus, okay? It's actually more like it's kind of back in here, but they do, it's not back here like you would normally think with an animal, right? It's gonna come out, no, it comes out the front. So that's something special. As you can see, they've got between 2 and 4 sensory tentacles. That's what these guys are in the front, and they have eyes. Sometimes these aren't, necessarily eyes. It's more just, sensory parts. Okay, they vary a little bit. These guys have a couple other things we haven't really talked about. They have a little bit better kidneys. They have a liver. Okay, we haven't really talked about that. They have salivary glands, just like you do. Well, not just like, but pretty close. All right, what do your salivary glands do? They make saliva, they make your spit, okay? What does spit do? Why do we have saliva? It helps to dissolve certain types of food, very good. Okay, that's what it's for. It helps to dissolve things before they even get to the stomach. It starts that whole process, okay? Some animals have developed saliva that does different things, right? We talk about leeches. Their saliva, they've got that protein in it, hirudinin, which allows you to bleed more freely once they bite you, and not the anesthetic part to where when they bite you, you don't necessarily feel it, okay? So salivary glands they can be very specialized in things like a rattlesnake. Their venom glands are highly modified salivary glands. Okay. We used to call it gleeking. Have you guys ever done that where you'll be talking or something and all of a sudden you spit? It's like you're spitting venom, but it's actually your saliva. Happens sometimes when you're really hungry, right? It's because your body is like, especially around lunchtime. If we were to keep you guys an hour later than normal for lunch, you might start, and I don't know where the term came. That was from like the late 80s, early 90s, bleak. But it was, you got two salivary openings right under your tongue. And sometimes if you roll your tongue back hard enough and push it against the roof of your mouth, you can actually spray. It's a trick. It's one of those things, you know, it's especially for high schoolers, it's one of those cool tricks. It's like, yeah, this is kind of neat. And then you forget about it once you get to college. It's like, okay, that's really not that cool. All right, these guys can also be male or female or hermaphrodites. Just kind of depends on the snail. The coolest one, or the one that we're going to kind of just, I'm going to mention, is called a cone snail. Named because of the shape of the shell, okay? These guys are venomous. Highly venomous. They have a barbed stinger that sticks out that they can actually kill humans. They can be that venomous, okay? They can hunt prey with this. They can defend themselves with this. It's a bad deal. And they shoot it out very quickly, and it will penetrate your flesh pretty easily, and then you're going to have a bad day. All right, so any questions on Gastropodia? Stomach, foot. Now, the next one is going to be Cephalopoda. I'm going to be real lazy here. Just get rid of that part of it. I'm going to get rid of this part, because guess what? Poda is still foot. Okay? So I'll get rid of that. Cephalopoda means head, foot. Cephalo means head. You have cephalic nerves. Where do you find them? In your head. Okay? Cephalopoda. You're going to remember those words more than likely because there are other animals. We're going to talk about cephalo. You're going to hear it several times. Poda is a big one. Okay? The next ones we're going to talk about are arthropoda. Poda again, foot or leg. Okay? In that case, it's more leg, joint with leg. Okay? Yeah. What's that? Well, yeah, why do we use foot so often? It's descriptive, I guess. I was talking to a student yesterday about that, and yeah, some of the ancient, like we named the stuff for ancient Greek stuff, and again, some of this wasn't really named until like the 1600s. You know, it wasn't really classified, right? They called it snail way before they ever called it a gastropod, okay, or whatever the Greek equivalent of snail was, I suppose. But for whatever reason, that's what they went with. That's what's stuck with, right? We haven't updated that, which is probably a good thing. With all the new species, all the new dinosaurs and stuff, with all the new naming things that we've got, it's kind of nice to go back to the ones that are just kind of, that's just what they were. Why they use foot so much, I don't know. I don't know. It was a good descriptor, I guess. Once they started finding things that had feet, they can throw them all in that kind of classification. I'm not 100% sure. But it's very common. All right, so what kind of animals do you think these are? We're staying with the food theme a little bit. This is where we get calamari. These are your octopus, which is technically octopuses is correct. I learned that last year. I've always called them octopi my entire life. Science has come together now and said it's octopuses, which I think just sounds goofy. Octopuses, squid, cuttlefish, which are much like squid, and nautilus. Okay. Nautiluses are really cool. If like the Bahamas, a lot of times that's one of the things you see on a lot of their I don't know, their promotional materials is the nautilus. All right. Nautilus is one of those. It looks kind of like a squid. It's got tentacles on the front, a big eye, and then a big curled shell. Okay. That's a really terrible looking nautilus. They're very beautiful animals. Let's just get rid of that. That's so ugly. Does not look much like one, but that's kind of what they look like. All right, they've got tentacles. They definitely belong here, but they are much different because they actually have a nice hard shell on the outside. These guys don't so much. These guys have kind of a shell, but it's more on the inside. It's been covered by the mantle. These guys just have just the very rudimentary little, it's just what's left of it. These guys are only marine. Okay, we will not find freshwater octopuses. Right? If you ever do, you're going to be rich, probably, because you have found something that science has never discovered. Okay? The arms that they have, and they are all known to have several arms. You guys know that, right? 8 here, 10 here, cuttlefish. I think that's 8, but I'm not going to write it down because I don't remember for sure. Nautilus have a whole mess of them. Okay, these guys have 8 main ones, then the 2 long hunting tentacles that shoot out. Okay, the arms are just a modified mollusk foot. Okay, when we did the snail, this part's the foot down here. Okay, with an octopus, it just took that. And it's still the same, but it just starts doing that number. And some of them are very, very specialized. They have much longer tail, whatever. But essentially, it just evolved and modified and went from there. Okay, so it's very muscular. The foot is a muscular part of them. These guys are strong. They have siphons that they use as jets. Water jets to help themselves move very, very quickly. None of these are sessile. They're all motile animals. They are predatory. They go hunting. They're really good at it. They're really nasty. They're well suited for what they do. See, they have ink sacs, most of them. You made me ink, right? From Finding Nemo, a little, one of my tentacles is longer than the other, or whatever, okay? The ink sac, it's a real thing. When they get scared or if they're being attacked, they blow that into the water and it clouds and you can't see them and they take off, okay? These guys have closed circulation. Okay, so the other 2 classes that we talked about in Phylum Mollusca had open circulation. They just kind of pump blood and it just kind of goes, right? He pump hemolymph. These guys actually have vessels. But again, it's still clear blood. You're not gonna, when you cut them, they're not just gonna all of a sudden be like bleeding red. It's clear. Okay, like with like an insect. They also have hemolymph, spoiler alert, we'll be talking about that next week. They have 3 hearts. Not 3 chambered hearts, 3 hearts. They have 2 gill hearts and 1 systemic heart, okay? The systemic heart's the one that moves the blood into the tentacles and throughout the body. The gill hearts are what help to move the oxygenated blood into the animal, okay? We do this a little differently, right? We don't have gill hearts, we have 1 heart, but part of what our body does, it runs blood to the lungs, allows us to pick up oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide, brings that back to the heart, then the heart, it goes to the other side, the heart then pumps it throughout the body, and it comes back, and then it goes back through the lungs, right? It's a cool, efficient system. These guys do it a little different. They got 3 hearts. Very well developed, usually. Developed eyes. And at least in the octopus case, brain. They are very intelligent animals. They've been doing a lot of research with these things lately, and they are, some of the newer research is just stunning at how intelligent these things are. Because of these well-developed eyes and brains, they can actually recognize and differentiate, just squeeze that in there, human faces. Okay, now this is kind of a weird deal. Why? Normally, do humans come in contact with octopuses? I mean, we might go fishing and we might catch some or whatever, but usually we, go ahead and eat the animal, right? Sometimes they'll throw them back, depends on what it is. But they've done research in labs, and what they do is they have somebody feed the octopus and actually interact with the octopus. Then they have somebody else, or they have that same person put on a mask that makes their face look different, and they harass the octopus, okay? Maybe they tease it, they don't let it eat, or maybe they poke at it or something just to kind of upset it, all right? The octopus can tell the difference, and when the person that feeds it and is nice to it comes in, it will come over to the side of the tank and just be right there in their face wanting, feed me, play with me, all right? But when the mean person comes in, the person that's been harassing the animal comes in, it goes back to the other side of the tank. It usually changes its color and either tries to hide itself or maybe starts flashing colors saying, I'm not happy with you, I don't like you. That's a very, we put it in human terms all the time. We anthropomorphize animals a lot, but that's a very human trait, right? How many times have you guys, well, you guys are all young, right? You've probably all, had a boyfriend or a girlfriend or something, young love, right? You see that person and your heart beats a little faster, right? You recognize their face and your heart beats a little faster because it's a good memory. Same thing happens with their three little hearts, right? They get happy to see people that are nice to them, okay? Same thing though, if you have somebody that you've been fighting with since 5th grade and you see them down the hall, you're like, oh, man, you start to bow up, you don't even mean to, but it's like, you just can't help it. You're recognizing their face from a long ways away. Octopuses do the same thing, okay? And you don't want an octopus to blow up on you, okay? Because they're mean. Why? They're all venomous also. We've figured that out now, okay? So we'll get to that. Let's see. We were talking about that. They can actually change the color and texture of their mantle. These things are some of the best camouflagers on the planet, okay? They change the way their skin is, not just the color of it to match the background or to blend in, but also their shape, okay? It went from a smooth animal to now it's got these spikes on it. It looks like a coral reef, okay? Or now it looks like maybe there's some seaweed floating on top of this rock. They can change the texture of their mantle, okay? It'd be like you being able to just all of a sudden you can put spikes up through your skin or something, okay? Or all of a sudden now you got like camouflaging stripes on you, and then you change your skin to where now it's more, it looks like rock, or they're really cool creatures. They've done a lot of research on those too. Okay, so octopuses are really good at it. Cuttlefish are pretty good at it. Squid don't do that so much, but they do the color thing. There's a Humboldt squid. It's a very predatory squid. They've got suckers, right? All these guys have suckers, right? These guys don't really. But these guys have suckers on their tentacles, right? It helps them to catch food. The Humboldt squid not only has suckers on the legs, but those suckers have little hooks in them. You got like little teeth that, yeah, the suction part of it works, but they also hook it into your skin. Okay, the Humboldt squid can get about as tall as you are, right? If they're and they get like 80 pounds or so. So it's a missile. I mean, they're fast, they're cool. When they're hunting or when they're upset, they flash from red to white and back and forth, and you can tell the animal is upset or is agitated because they'll start flashing faster. Okay, when they are hunting for Humboldt squid. The thing is, if somebody gets pulled overboard, they're gone. These things will tear them to pieces, okay? These get in, they hook them, and they're starting to shred them. They also, we hadn't talked about it yet, but these guys have a beak. They have a radula as well, but it's the beak like in a parrot, down inside the body. So we've got, here's an octopus, right? There's the legs, okay? The beak is right about here. Chomp, chomp. It is like a parrot's beak. It chops pieces out of its prey, okay? And something like a giant squid, they're actually, you know, they're about the size of your hand or your fingers, okay? We're talking a very large parrot, and you know what parrots can do to finger, well, maybe you don't, but you don't want to know if you don't know, okay? They can be really nasty, bitey animals. These guys are too, and the Humboldt squid, because they also hunt in packs. So it's not like you're only going to come across one, you'll come across 100 of them. And yeah, if somebody goes overboard, they don't even try to rescue them because they'll get torn to pieces themselves. Yeah, it's one of those things that there's not a lot of people that go after them, but the ones that do are pretty brave or crazy, one or the other. Let's see, beak tarantula. These guys are all either male or female. Okay, they are dioecious. Talked about that. Dioecious, they're either male or female. There are no hermaphrodites, okay, with these guys. Now, how big can they get? Well, they have verified lengths of at least 33 feet in like the colossal squid, the giant squid. An octopus, they figure, you know, the giant Pacific octopus, probably an arm span of at least 20 feet, okay? Again, this room is about 25, 27 by 25, okay? So essentially, if it spread its arms, it would almost be like a parachute over the top of all of us, okay? And the big ones, all right? And again, this is something that's got eight arms and it's strong. There was a guy that was swimming with one and he found it. He didn't realize that's what it was. He thought there was like a boulder on the bottom and it was relatively shallow where he was until it moved at him. And they figured it was only about 8 feet long, but it got a hold of him and it didn't want to let go. They're very curious creatures. It probably wasn't hunting him. It just hadn't seen a human before. And it was like, just what are you, right? They're super curious. They really like to, they study us as much as we study them a lot of times in the lab setting anyway. 33 feet, they figure they can get at least 1,000 pounds on some of them. Maybe more. A lot of your Kraken stories, right? I'm of Norse heritage, right? You go back in the Kraken, a lot of times it was this giant, like island-sized animal. They thought, oh, we found new land. You know, I've got my Viking longship and we're rowing toward it, and then it moves on you, right? It takes your ship down, okay? Or what, like with the you know, here there be monsters out on the old timey maps, right? A lot of times the Kraken stuff they think was probably colossal squid, giant squid, something like that. Now, is there any proof that we had squid over 100 feet that could take down boats? Not really, okay? There is some kind of anecdotal evidence. It's kind of interesting. Something I was reading the other day in researching for this. They think with some of these animals, we're actually going through it's like a reverse giantification, right? There for a while, animals were getting huge on the planet, right? They just think about dinosaurs. Not all of them were huge, but they got really big, right? We've got blue whales that are just massive. We had maybe back, you know, 1,000 years ago, maybe these guys were bigger, right? But now there's so much pollution in the ocean and there's so much overhunting and stuff. The big ones don't get to breed because we hunt them off before they ever get full grown, whatever. And now we've got kind of a miniaturization going on of some of these animals. I don't know, okay? I mean, proof-wise, we got this, right? But that doesn't mean that won't change tomorrow, right? It's cool. It's creepy, but I like thinking about this type of stuff. I dig that, okay? Again, all octopuses, and I believe it's squid now that they have found, are venomous, slightly. Okay, not like too bad, but they bite their prey, they anesthetize it a little bit, it doesn't fight so much, and then they go ahead and chop it up, right? But if we get down to something like a blue ring octopus, Blue ring octopus, that is human deadly within 5 minutes on some people. Okay, it's very powerful neurotoxin. It essentially just shuts your brain off and your spinal cord, and now nerves don't work, and now your lungs don't work, and you just, that's it. Blue ring octopus are beautiful animals. They're typically white with bright blue rings on them, circles, okay? We haven't talked about this much, but if I'm a highly venomous or poisonous animal, a lot of times I'm very brightly colored, all right? Why is that? It's like a poison dart frog, right? Or a coral snake, or a monarch butterfly, and they're poisonous. A lot of these animals, if you eat it, if it's poisonous, you're going to get sick, but we'll have a nice bright color to say, hey, you tried to eat me when you were younger. Are you going to try that again, or do you remember getting really sick, right? With the blue rings and some of the things that are venomous, not all of them are brightly colored, but some of them are. And those blue rings, they're electric blue. They don't change their color. So they're not worried about camouflaging. They're saying, I'm the baddest thing on this planet. Come mess with me. They're about the size of like a ping pong ball with legs. They don't get very big. Like seriously, the size of your hand is going to be a really big blue ring octopus. They don't get very big. But that's kind of the problem. Is kids are out on the ocean shore. Sometimes they're the little pools after the tide goes out. We've got the little tidal pools, and kids are playing in there. Oh, it's a cute little octopus, and they're cute little animals. So they bite you, and you got 5 minutes or so. I knew a guy that when I was in Dallas, I worked with fish tanks quite often. I was cleaning fish tanks, putting in like custom ones. One of the guys I knew worked with a company that actually would get blue rings in sometimes. And his deal was always, he would, the nights that he had to go in and clean the tank that the blue rings were in, he always brought 1 beer and 1 cigarette with him, okay? Because he figured if I get tagged by that animal, I might have enough time to drink the beer and smoke the cigarette before my heart stops and I'm done. He might, I don't know that he would have gotten them finished. I really don't. It depends on the animal and how bad it gets you. Now, with some venomous animals, you get what's called dry bites, right? Rattlesnakes sometimes will dry bite you, meaning they'll bite you, they'll penetrate, but they're not going to pump you with venom. Why? That's used for their food. They use the venom to slow down the rat so they can go find it quicker, right? Or so it doesn't struggle so much. They don't want to use it on a big dumb primate like us that they're not going to try to eat us. They know that. They just want, hey, back off, right? Now, sometimes, yeah, they'll venom you. They'll hit you, There's a like old wives' tale about, young snakes, baby snakes, right? They're going to give you the full venom load because they don't know the difference, right? Not necessarily, right? You don't have to be more worried about a baby snake than a big snake. Just don't mess with it. If you can't identify it, don't touch it. Don't pick it up. And if you can't identify it and it's venomous, stop. Most people that get bitten by venomous snakes are messing with it. They could have walked away at any point. A lot of times they're drunk. Hey, hold my beer, watch me do this. And you don't want to do that with rattlesnakes. It's a bad idea. Anyway, that's about it. That's really all I'm going to hold you guys responsible for knowing with Phylum Mollusca. Next class, we'll watch a video that really goes into the intelligence of the octopus. Okay, so I'm going to stop the Zoom here. Hope you guys learned some stuff.